Good evening, viewers. Today I have the privilege of interviewing a voice that you probably would not have heard before, and there are many reasons behind it. There are millions of people who are being suppressed, their voices are being crushed by China, and I'm talking about the Uyghur community here. For years, they have been suffering at the hands of China and the Communist Party of China. But today, we have someone with us who has lived through it, and she is here to tell us her story. So without further ado, Rushan, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast, for taking our time to do this, to tell us your story so that we can understand what really is happening. I have with me Rushan Abbas, who's a Uyghur American and rights advocate, also the founder and executive director of Campaign for Uyghurs, something that we will talk about in just a short bit. But just for the benefit of our viewers, Rushan, if you can begin by telling us where exactly are you right now and where do you come from? What part of Xinjiang, the so-called autonomous region, do you come from?
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and shedding a light on this unprecedented atrocity of the century, China's crimes against humanity. I was born and raised in the capital city of East Turkestan that we call our homeland. China officially called the area Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, but there is no any kind of autonomy. It's absolute occupied, oppressed land. The Uyghur people are being targeted for ethnic cleansing right now. What the Chinese government is doing today is active genocide.
All right, so where exactly are you right now?
I am in Washington, D.C., in Northern Virginia, nearby Washington, D.C. That's where I live. I came to the United States in 1989, and I have been living here. I am an Uyghur American, and I am a mother and a sister to someone who is being victimized by this China's concentration camps, and she has been abducted almost 22 months ago for my activism here in America as an American citizen.
So you're saying that because of your activism, your sister who's back in, back in China, back in Xinjiang, if I may say, she's been put into a detention camp there.
Yes, I was being very vocal after this recent deterioration in the situation, and the Chinese government built concentration camps targeting Uyghurs because of our ethnicity, our religion, and our culture, and the taking people there. I spoke at one of the think tanks in Washington, D.C. as a panelist on September 5th, 2018. And I talked about the conditions of the camps and the current situation and the fate of my in-laws, which is my husband's entire family, disappeared since April 2017. And 6 days after my speech at the Hudson Institute, my sister, who was a retired medical doctor, and my aunt, they both got abducted on the same day as a retaliation for me being outspoken about this atrocity. My aunt was released a few months later, but my sister is still being the victim there.
So Rushan, your aunt then perhaps told you about what is really happening in these detention camps. You know, nobody across the world really has any idea of what's happening. We have just seen some obscure images and we only know a little bit, bits and pieces that come out. If you can please just, for the benefit of our viewers in the world that's watching right now, tell us exactly what is it that was happening in these camps.
I have not spoken to my aunt just to protect her, just to protect my relatives. Actually, I have not spoken to my sister since 2017, just to protect her. But speaking with other witnesses who are the former inmates being released from the camps only because either they are a citizen of other countries or they married to citizens of other countries, and they are lucky to leave East Turkestan after being released. According to them, and according to some news reports that recently coming to the surface. And according to leaked documents by the Chinese government themselves, actually, what's happening there is basically remind you of Holocaust. The history is repeating itself. The concentration camps are basically being like armed guards with double barbed wires. People are subject to intense indoctrinations, mental and the physical torture, and they are forced to forsake their religion and their cultural ethnic identity and their language. And also the females are subject to rape, and they are forced to take some unknown medications. And the inside of the camps are so overcrowded, people are taking turns to lay down and sleep. So basically sleep and the food deprivations and the dehydrations because they don't get enough water to drink. So many people are dying. We are Muslim. The Muslims do not practice cremation, yet crematorias are being built next to those concentration camps. That should be the warning sign, but the international communities are muted. People are not paying attention. It's all because of China's economic manipulations, because of the power of the Belt and Road Initiative and the trade threats that they are using with other countries, and that threat diplomacy they are currently doing, and the manipulation in United Nations as the second largest donor. Basically, the Chinese government is becoming a power able to strong arm the world. Okay. And also they're bribing some of the key politicians and some influential news media outlets and the important business people and the influential scholars. And they are basically silencing the criticism of the international communities.
So, Rushan, I just want to know, like you said that, you're not speaking to your family right now to keep them safe, but how is it that you get some sort of communication from there? For example, how did you get to know about, your sister being abducted and being put in a detention camp?
My sister's two daughters, they both live in America, and they have been communicating with my sister. Last time, my niece, Ziba, she's being very vocal right now, and she's raising her mother's case now. Ziba last heard from her mom was on her WeChat. She said, she just had a baby like 2 months prior to that. So my sister told her, try to get some sleep when baby's sleeping. That was the last message. And her other daughter was pregnant, 8 months pregnant. So she used to communicate with her daughters. But now her second daughter had her second baby 2 weeks after my sister's abduction. And my sister doesn't even know that she became a new grandma for a new baby boy or baby girl. So my nieces are trying to get information about their mother, but they don't know where her whereabouts.
How does that work then? Are you in touch with the embassy? What sort of procedure does one follow? Because, you are one person in exile, and there would be so many Uyghurs who've been forced out of their homes, literally, and, forced to take shelter in countries across the world. And one can't begin to imagine the sort of, mental trauma all of you, your entire community must be going through not getting to speak to your family.
Yes, actually you are right. There are about 1 to 2 million Uyghurs in diaspora. Every one of them, you speak to every Uyghur in diaspora anywhere, in United States, in Canada, Australia, Europe, Central Asia, Turkey, every place. They have at least one or more than 10 or 20 relatives or immediate family members are in concentration camps. In this 21st century, this is supposed to be information era. The China claims to build next the internet backbone, the 5G. Yet, the Uyghurs cannot communicate with their family members. They cannot just pick up the phone, even if their family members are not in the concentration camps. They cannot even use their phone to just send text messages, just hear their voices. Basically, Chinese government is using these concentration camps today for killing 4 birds with 1 stone. These people are the forced millions of Uyghurs working as the slaves in the concentration camps, working on production and advancing China's economy, basically. Secondly, the Chinese government is reallocating the Uyghur people's wealth and the homes and the land to Han Chinese settlers, and also vacating the land for the Belt and Road Initiative. Three, when the Uyghur men are taken to the concentration camps, Uyghur women and the girls are forced to marry Han Chinese. And the girls nor their families can refuse such a forced marriage because of the fear of the repercussions. If they say no, or family members say no, they are being viewed as religious extremists, didn't want to marry non-Muslim Chinese people. Four, all of the Uyghurs were mandatorily faced a collection of DNA samples. We didn't know what was that for when the government did this 3-4 years ago. Now we are seeing China's advertising halal body organs. What does that mean? The Uyghurs are being basically forced to subject to the forced organ planting, organ harvesting. Basically, the Chinese government, what they did was they publicly denounced the Uyghur culture and ethnic identities, and the Uyghurs' ethnic identity and the Uyghurs' cultures were stigmatized, and the Uyghur people's religion, our religion, Islam, was being demonized. So using the war on terror, they are saying that what they are doing is fighting the Islamic extremists, and this is for China's national security. But when you look at it, not only people in the concentration camps today being used as slaves, they are subject to all this. Just regular people like you and me, the entire Uyghur population are subject to basically George Orwell style surveillance police state. The Uyghur people's homes are being implemented the QR scanning codes. Every vehicle has GPS tracking devices. Every 100 meters has checkpoints. So basically, every Uyghur is being treated as criminals. They are being watched, they are being monitored. And another thing, this is something that people hear and they cannot even imagine. When they hear, they can't even believe. Chinese media, this is not something I'm saying, Chinese media, Chinese propaganda videos show 1.1 million Han Chinese deployed to Uyghur homes to live inside of the Uyghurs families and share beds with them. Imagine, most men are taken. The women left at home, they have to share bed with those Chinese officials came to monitor their daily lives. This is basically government-sponsored mass rape. Something like this never happened in any part of the history, any part of the world. Yet, in the 21st century, the Chinese government is getting away with this because of the information blockade, because of China's manipulation, because many places like even Hollywood, look at Hollywood. They're usually very vocal about any kind of, like feminist issues or other social injustice. But where are all the famous feminist activists? Where are the voices? Why nobody's saying anything for something like this?
So, Rushan, I want to ask you, the bill that that has been passed on Uyghurs in the United States of America. Now, all the things that you're telling me, I can't even imagine. And I wish I could say sorry on behalf of the world, but I know that means very little at this point in time. But given that the world community has been silent for so long, and somewhere because of the pandemic caused by China, we've all been woken up from our slumbers, and we've been exposed to China's reality. Are you somewhere hopeful that with the bill passed in the US, there is now going to be a momentum that will help you gain the freedom that you rightly deserve?
Yes, we are just extremely happy to see this. We are thrilled by the bill being passed, and it's just a few days from becoming a law. Especially like what you mentioned, the world is facing such a trauma right now. So many people are getting sick and dying. Even United States, we have over 100,000 people died because of this pandemic. Actually, China's action to deny and to keep quiet and the misinform and the punishing the whistleblowers is what caused this pandemic today. This was just some epidemic in Wuhan, but now it became global pandemic because of China's actions. In a situation like this, US lawmakers paying attention to the human rights abusers to punish China, hold China accountable. This really gives us hope. And I really hope that other democratic countries will follow this and do the same thing. This is not just protecting the Uyghur people anymore. This is about the next world order.
Right.
What kind of world that we are facing next? Because China is openly waging war on religion, not only on Islam, but all religion. They are not allowing the underground Christianities to continue their activities. Anybody who believes any kind of religion, because when you look at it, when totalitarian regime, they don't want any kind of original thought or faith that challenges their authority. And that's what's happening in China. And China is using what they are doing to our homeland in East Turkestan as a pilot program and exporting that to other parts. Look at what's happening in Hong Kong today.
Right. Absolutely, and you're right. And what's happening in Tibet, what's happening in Hong Kong, and so many parts. And like we said, that these so-called autonomous regions of China, which don't have any freedom at all, and that's the ground reality. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and it's been an eye-opener for me as well. And I'm sure it will be for our viewers. But somewhere, Rushan, then I also want to talk to you about the fact that as you said, that several Muslim countries have also been very quiet on the atrocities. Do you somewhere worry that because of China's expansionist agendas, and you spoke about the debt trap policy that China follows, are you somewhere worried that because of China's expansionist agendas, your cause will continue to remain, in the backseat for most of the countries? For example, China is building a road right through Gilgit-Baltistan. And
yes,
that perhaps shows exactly, how China makes its moves, how China comes into territories and takes over.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you asked me this question because if you look at why this is happening to Uyghur people today, and into Uyghur people's homeland, is because of the Belt and Road Initiative, which is blueprint for signature project for Xi Jinping's blueprint for the world domination. Basically, with the Belt and Road Initiative, his view for the world is taking over the entire world, and already started actually. It's not just about economy; it's territorial issue for China, because Chinese government has been preparing for this. They call last century as a century of retaliation, and last century as a century of humiliation, because they view as the Chinese people were treated unjustly and being humiliated as the sick people of the world. But now this century is China's century of retaliation. What does that mean? Retaliation against who? Basically, to all the democratic countries. Belt and Road Initiative puts our homeland in the epicenter of this project, because, as you mentioned, Gwadar Port, the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, that starts from Kashgar, goes down to the south, goes through our homeland, and all the major routes for Central Asia, for Turkey, for Europe, Africa, Middle East, everywhere that goes out from our homeland. So basically, our homeland is not only gateway to opening up China's economic routes going through, but also it's a gateway to defending Islam, defending the religion.
Right.
Because we are sort of like the last fortress. If they demolish us and go through, there's nothing is going to stop China getting all the way to Middle East. That's their plan, actually. So why Middle East is quiet? Let me just finish. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Why Muslim countries are being quiet? Mainly, I think, because they don't really know what's happening, and also the China's pressuring, because International Organization for Islamic Cooperation, OIC, they actually released statement at the end of 2017 criticizing China's treatment of the Uyghur Muslims. 57 member states, Muslim majority countries, belong to Organization of Islamic Cooperation. But just because 20 people, Chinese delegation, went to Abu Dhabi when they met next time, and they pressured them. So not only they withdraw their criticism, but they went so far, they passed resolution commanding Chinese government to continue its treatment against the Uyghurs. So that tells you how China is using whatever they invested before to buy their sides, like asking them to take China's side.
But, Rushan, now given the sort of, like I said, changing circumstances, are you somewhat hopeful, or do you feel that the world community really needs to focus on the absolute and complete freedom of say, Tibet, or even of East Turkestan, as you prefer to call it? Is it time that we start focusing on the freedom of these places, and that's the only way that China can be stopped?
Yes, because that's the only thing left, actually. Right now, it's about survival for Uyghurs. It's not about the rights, human rights, this, human rights, that. No, we are not talking about human rights. When Frontline did a documentary in PBS Frontline last month, when one of the Chinese officials was being interviewed on the camera, when the reporter asks, when he was talking about the situation in East Turkestan, and the reporter says, isn't it violating their rights? You know what he said? He said, what rights? They don't have any rights. There's nothing to violate about when they don't have it. So basically, the Uyghurs are facing eradication. Uyghurs are being collateral damage for the China's economic advance. So it's time for the world democracies and the other countries to seek the ultimate freedom for Tibet and the East Turkestan and the other people who actually deserve the ultimate right that God gave us.
So, Rushan, I have to ask you then, what can we as Indian people do? If you can tell us a little bit about the movement that you've started. I also saw that there was a phone number on your Twitter handle as well. If you can just tell us, what is it that we can do as people?
It's so important to raise awareness, because that's the only way that we can go and they fight against the China's false narratives and misinformation. The Chinese government is getting away with this atrocity because they are controlling the information, because they are spreading disinformation, and they are just telling the world all lies. So only way to fight that and win against it is spreading the truth, spreading the, raising the awareness, spreading the genocide the Chinese government is doing. Let the world community know the truth. And India, being a democratic country, should stand up to hold China accountable. When right now, the camps is not being such a big issue, because they already moved everybody to forced labor facilities the next to it. So basically, when people buy anything that made in China, they should think about those are the 21st century slaves, the Uyghur slaves made them. Boycott all the Chinese goods. And I cannot emphasize enough about raising awareness. That's what the Campaign for Uyghurs movement is about. Campaign for Uyghurs was established in the end of 2017 to work with grassroots organizations, because when you look at it, most of the human rights organizations and the people who deal with China policies, they know what's happening, but regular, ordinary people still don't know.
Right.
They still think that China is this great country, people are so hardworking, and that they don't understand the system. The Chinese Communist Party ideologies and the Chinese government's attitude. So just let people know. And that's why I really appreciate you doing this program, giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
And we hope that, we can continue having more of these conversations, because like I said, even as a person who does know a little bit of what's happening, it's eye-opening for me. I mean, it's unimaginable, the things that you've said in this interview, to think that even in today's day and age where we talk about a free world and, moving forward in scientific progress and all of that hullabaloo, some parts of the world are living in such oppression. But Rushan, before I let you go, I just have one last quick aspect that I'd like your thoughts upon. In the future, if it were to happen that East Turkestan becomes a free country entirely, and since India shares a border with East Turkestan and not proper China, not mainland China, do you think that we could perhaps solve the issue even of Aksai Chin amicably?
Absolutely. Now, what a beautiful thing to think. We almost look like each other because, like geographically, we are neighbors. A lot of people say with my name, Roshan, and how I look, ask, are you Indian? When I first came to the United States. So absolutely. India is a strong country, democratic country, and the neighboring with China. Really want to see something really positive, and I believe, I trust that it will be wonderful if something, and I want to use the last minute to just raise something here. Today is my sister's birthday, her second birthday that in captivity. She just turned 58 today, and I want to show this picture of her that I have been putting on my neck and carrying, and different pictures of her every place I go. So I just want to say happy birthday for my sister, and I am going to fight until the end of my life. My sister's soft heart and her kind soul gives me the strength to fight this totalitarian regime. So with India and with other democratic countries, we all need to work together to end this evident evil. Thank you.
Absolutely, Rushan. And, I would also like to wish your sister all of the best of health right now, and all of our prayers, I promise you, are with you, your family, your sister who's suffering back in Xinjiang right now, and at the same time all of the other millions of Uyghur Muslims who are suffering. Unfortunately, we can't do more than praying right now, but hopefully this systemic oppression that I believe that the rest of the world has also contributed to will come to an end sooner rather than later, and you will be reunited with your sister. Like I said, we pray for her health and for you guys to be reunited. And thank you so much, Rushan, for taking our time.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your prayers.
It was a lovely conversation, and I hope that the viewers watching this will have also learned something. And it's time that all of us wake up to the atrocities committed by China. That was Rushan Abbas with us on the broadcast.
For more such videos, subscribe to the newsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.